this video, we're going to talk about comma splices. Now, I've talked about them a lot already within the SAT writing sections, talking about which sentences, which phrases don't work on previous practice problems, but it's important to talk specifically about what they are, some quirks with them. So what is a comma splice? A comma splice is when a comma is used to separate two independent clauses. Within the English language, you use commas to separate a dependent clause and an independent clause. So maybe that dependent clause can give a little bit of extra context to an independent clause that already can stand on its own. Now, with fixing a comma splice, we can solve that by replacing the comma with a period and making two sentences, replacing it with a semicolon and having two interconnected independent clauses, or using our fanboys conjunction, so adding a comma at the end, using one of our fanboys words to connect one independent clause to another. We can also do it with a semicolon and however, so replacing that comma with a semicolon, putting however comma into that next independent clause, that would also work. Now, combining sentences with participles is a little bit different. So the use of the present participle with the ing ending can actually fix comma splices, and we do that by turning a second independent clause in a sentence into a dependent one. So just so you can get an example of what that looks like, let's think about this. They become large. That's a sentence that stands on its own. We have they as the subject and become as the verb. If we put that after a comma and imagine there's another independent clause right there, that would not work. You would have a comma splice. But we can actually fix that. If we get rid of that they become and actually turn the verb into becoming, we have becoming large after a comma. This does work because becoming large is now a dependent clause, cannot stand on its own. So let's look at our practice problem to figure things out. Climate also presented preservation problems. Keeping fresh fruits and meats was next to impossible in warmer waters. So right here we can see that there's a pretty obvious comma splice. Climate also presented preservation problems, and keeping fresh fruits and meats was next to impossible. Both of these are independent sentences that can stand on their own, so we're going to need something different than a comma there. No change is not going to work out for us. Now, problems keeping fresh fruits doesn't make sense. Now we're getting rid of punctuation altogether. We're trying to make it one big sentence when we have two independent clauses on our hands, so that's not going to work. Now, problems, comma, keeping fresh fruits with another comma doesn't fix the issue either. We're still using a comma where we need to be using some sort of other punctuation. We look down at D and we see that we have problems, semicolon, keeping fresh fruits, and that's actually going to work out for us. We're using that semicolon to prevent the comma splice there and create two independent clauses.